I didn't notice her at first, not really. Just another customer standing by the counter, one hand resting on the edge, nails short and clean, a quiet kind of authority in the way she waited. The repair shop always smelled like metal and dust, that faint, oily tang that sticks to your clothes. The radio murmured some old rock song in the background, the kind older customers like to hum to. But when she spoke, even the noise seemed to pull back a little. "I was told you could look at my car today," she said, her voice even, with that tired politeness people use when they've already been disappointed once. I wiped my hands on a rag, nodded. "Yeah, sure. What's the issue?" Her eyes flicked up, dark brown, steady, the kind that measure you before you've said anything. She wasn't impatient. She was observant. The kind of woman who'd lived enough life to tell when someone was bluffing. "It's been making a sound. Left side. A rattle, maybe. It's hard to describe. Most good things are," I said before thinking, then immediately wanted to take it back. Something changed in her face. Not a smile exactly, but a soft crease near her mouth. Amused. Or maybe just surprised. I'd been to inspect the car, partly to hide the heat crawling up my neck. My sister had mentioned her boyfriend's older sister once, said she was elegant but hard to read. I hadn't realized she meant this woman. "Can you leave it here a few hours?" I asked. "I can wait." She said it so calmly that I looked up, thinking she must be joking. But no, she'd already settled into one of the chairs near the window, crossing her legs like someone perfectly at ease in her own silence. I tried to focus on the car, but I kept feeling her eyes there, not on me exactly, more like around me, an awareness I couldn't shake. It was ridiculous how self-conscious I became. I'd fixed dozens of cars with people watching. But when she stood up to pour herself a coffee from the old machine in the corner, I found myself watching the way she moved, deliberate, unhurried. She stirred the cup slowly, then glanced toward me with a look that landed somewhere between polite and personal. "You look young for someone who runs this place," she said. "I get that a lot. Is that why you don't wear a name tag? To look older?" I laughed, nervous, light. "No, because the glue keeps peeling off." Her mouth curved again. "Honest answer. I like that." There it was, the kind of comment that shouldn't mean anything, but lingers longer than it should. After that, she stayed quiet. Just sat there, reading something on her phone, the sunlight from the window touching her face in soft gold lines. Every now and then, she'd glance up, like she was making sure I was still there. And each time, I felt that same tiny jolt, the one you get before you realize something's beginning, though you don't yet know what it is. When I finally told her the car was ready, she thanked me with that same measured grace. She paid in cash, left a small tip on the counter, and said, "Tell your sister I said hello." That should have been the end of it. Just a customer. Just another afternoon. But as she turned to leave, she paused at the door, only for a second, and looked back. Not a smile. Not a goodbye. Just looked. Long enough for something quiet and unexplainable to take root. And now, days later, every time the bell above the door rings, I still half expect to see her standing there, calm, collected, pretending she doesn't notice how I can't look away. She came back 3 days later, said the car was fine, but she'd heard a new sound. I knew she hadn't. I could tell by the way she lingered in the doorway, coat folded neatly over one arm, as if she was still deciding whether she should have come in at all. "It's probably nothing," she added, voice too casual. But I thought, better safe than sorry. I nodded, pretending to check the logbook. "Sure, let's take a look." We worked side by side that afternoon. She'd leaned against the hood, watching me test the engine, her hair pulled back, a few strands escaping near her temple. It was warm inside the shop, sunlight flickering through the dusty glass, catching the faint shimmer of her perfume, something faintly citrus, clean, but familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. "You must get tired of this," she said. "Fixing things." She nodded. "Not really. I like quiet problems. Machines don't lie." That made her smile, small but real. "I suppose people do." I didn't answer. She didn't expect me to. The silence stretched, comfortable at first, then too heavy, until she shifted slightly, rubbing her hands together. Her fingers were elegant but restless, like she didn't quite know what to do with them. "You okay?" I asked. "Cold hands," she said quickly. "Always have been." I wiped mine on a rag, hesitated, then handed it to her. "Here." She took it, maybe just to be polite, but when her fingers brushed mine, she froze. A half-second pause, barely anything, and then she drew her hand back, eyes lowering to the floor. "Thanks," she murmured, softer now. That moment hung between us like a thin thread neither of us wanted to name. I saw her shoulders straighten again, the practiced composure sliding back into place. She turned toward the window, watching the street like she was waiting for someone to rescue her from her own stillness. "So," she said eventually, "how long have you known my brother?" "About a year. Since he started dating my sister." Her tone was light, but her jaw tightened. "She's lucky. He's a good man." I studied her face for a second. Something flickered there, something she didn't want me to see. Regret maybe, or longing. I couldn't tell. "He talks about you sometimes," I said quietly. "Says you're the one everyone listens to." Her laugh surprised me. It wasn't bitter, just tired. "That's what happens when you're the oldest. You become the family's steady thing." She looked at me then, directly, and I felt it, the weight behind her calm. Years of holding herself together so carefully that even her laughter sounded measured. "Do you ever get tired of being steady?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she exhaled slowly, gaze dropping to the rag still in her hand. "I don't let myself think about that," she said finally. And then, like she'd said too much, she placed the rag on the counter and stepped back, shoulders squaring again. "I should go," she said, though neither of us moved. She hesitated by the door, same as last time, and turned just slightly. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile when she spoke. It really wasn't making any sound. Then she left, leaving behind the faint smell of citrus and the memory of her hand trembling in mine, just for a moment. It started raining just before closing. The kind of slow, deliberate rain that doesn't hurry. It just settles in, owning the evening. She showed up half an hour before I locked up. Said she was nearby, thought she'd stop in to check on her imaginary noise. I didn't call her out on it. I just motioned toward the stool near the counter. "You're gonna get soaked going back out there." She glanced toward the window, then back at me. "Maybe I'll wait it out then." The lights flickered once, the storm pressing against the roof. The radio was dead. The silence felt heavier for it. I went back to the workbench, tools spread out in rows that suddenly looked ridiculous, like I needed something to keep my hands busy. She found a paper cup and poured herself coffee from the machine. "Still the same blend," she said, smiling faintly. "Burnt and bitter." "Consistency," I said, grinning. It was small talk, but every word felt loaded, like we both knew it wasn't really about the coffee. When thunder cracked outside, she startled slightly, the cup trembling in her hand. I saw it before she caught herself, that flicker of something unguarded. Vulnerability, raw and brief. "You okay?" She nodded too quickly. "I just hate storms." Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I wanted to ask why, but I didn't. Instead, I handed her the small towel I used for wiping tools. She took it without meeting my eyes. "Thanks," she murmured, drying her fingers. "You're kind, you know that." "Not really," I said. "Just trying not to make you spill coffee on my floor." That made her laugh. Low, quiet, but real. And for a few seconds, the air shifted, something gentler, warmer. She walked around the counter, curious, tracing her fingers along the metal edges of the bench. "You built all this yourself?" "Most of it," I said. "Didn't like how the old owner ran things." "Sounds familiar." When I turned, she was closer than before. Too close. Her perfume was faint now, less citrus, more rain and warmth. She wasn't smiling. She just looked tired. The kind of tired that sits behind your ribs. "I don't really know why I come here," she said quietly. "Maybe you just like bad coffee." Her lips curved, but her eyes didn't follow. "Or maybe it's the company." The words hung there, soft, but sharper than they should have been. My pulse kicked up. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She seemed to notice that, how still I'd gone, and something in her expression flickered, uncertain now. Before either of us could say anything, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name, Ethan. Her stepbrother's name. My sister's boyfriend. She stared at it, then pressed the screen face down without answering. I should go, she said, her voice barely holding together. I nodded. Yeah, roads might flood soon. But she didn't move right away. Her eyes caught mine, searching, almost apologetic, and for a second, it felt like the space between us could vanish if one of us just leaned forward. She didn't. Neither did I. When she finally turned away, she brushed past me, not touching, but close enough that the warmth of her sleeve lingered against my skin long after the door shut behind her. And in the silence that followed, I realized the rain wasn't what was keeping me from leaving that night. It was the feeling that if she came back tomorrow, I wouldn't stop her. She didn't come by for a week. Then another. By the third, I'd convinced myself that was it. That she'd felt what I had and done the only sane thing, walk away. But on Thursday, just before closing, I saw her car pull up again. Same deliberate way she parked. Same pause before she stepped out, like she was rehearsing calm. Sorry for the late hour, she said when the bell above the door rang. Her tone was steady, but her hands were empty. No keys, no papers, no excuse. Not a problem, I said. You hear about the car? She hesitated. No, I just was driving past. That wasn't true. Neither of us called it out. She stood there, coat still on, the sound of rain still dripping from her umbrella. I could hear the clock ticking behind me, each second louder than the last. Finally, she spoke. This has to stop, doesn't it? The words hit like a door closing. I don't even know what this is, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine, searching, almost pleading. Exactly. She stepped further in, resting one hand on the counter. The edge of her sleeve brushed an oil stain, but she didn't notice. You're kind to me, she said. More than I deserve. That's not true. Don't say that. Her voice cracked then, just slightly, but enough to slice through her usual control. You don't know me. I know enough, I said, quieter now. I know you come here even when you don't need to. Her mouth trembled, and for the first time, she didn't hide it. You think that's something to be proud of? That I can't stay away from someone I shouldn't even. She stopped herself. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that hums under your skin, where words feel dangerous. I took a step closer, not touching her, just close enough that she could feel the warmth. We haven't done anything wrong, I said. Her laugh was small, bitter. That's what people always say before they do. The clock ticked again. Rain whispered against the windows. She pressed her palm against the counter, grounding herself, like she was afraid she might move if she didn't. Every time I leave this place, she said softly, I tell myself I imagined it, that it's just me being lonely. She paused, the word landing with weight. But then I think about the way you look at me, and I realize I didn't imagine anything. My throat went dry. I wanted to say something, anything, but every word felt too small. I don't want to make this harder for you, I finally said. Her eyes glistened. You already have. We stood there. No distance, no words left. Just the quiet admission that whatever this was, pretending it was harmless wasn't possible anymore. When she finally turned to leave, she stopped by the door, her hand resting on the frame. Without looking back, she said, You make me remember what it feels like to want something I can't have. Then she walked out, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like the echo of something breaking. I didn't expect to see her again. Not after that last night. Not after what she said. But a few weeks later, she walked in quietly, like she'd always belonged there. She wasn't dressed like before. No careful layers or elegant coat. Just a plain sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows, hair slightly undone. She looked smaller somehow, or maybe just less guarded. I didn't come for the car, she said before I could speak. I came because I found something. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, its edges bent and soft. She placed it on the counter between us. It was a man, maybe in his 20s, grease on his hands, standing by a car that looked older than both of us. Behind him, the same workbench I was standing at now. My father, she said quietly. He used to come here. This was his shop before he sold it. I looked closer. Same layout, same tools. Even the dent in the counter was there, just younger, cleaner. You never told me, I said. I didn't know until yesterday, she said, tracing the edge of the photo. My mother kept a box of his things. I found this inside. The handwriting on the back says May 1996, Harrison's Garage. That was the old name, I murmured, before I bought it. She nodded, eyes distant. He died that same year. Heart attack. I was 18. Silence pressed between us. Not awkward, just heavy with something ancient and raw. I used to come here as a kid, she went on. I'd sit on that stool over there and wait for him to finish. He'd always have oil on his hands, same as you. He'd ruffle my hair and say, engines don't lie, but people do, so learn to listen to both. I froze. He said that. She smiled faintly. Why? Because I said that to you once, I said quietly. She blinked. Once. Twice. You did. We both stared at the photo again. The rain outside had started up, faint and slow, the kind that feels like memory more than weather. I think maybe that's why I kept coming back, she said, her voice trembling now. You remind me of him. Not in how you look, in how you are. The calm, the way you listen. Something inside me shifted, a quiet, almost imperceptible ache. What I'd mistaken for attraction, maybe she'd been trying to rewrite as memory. She looked up then, eyes searching mine. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You just made me feel safe again. I wanted to reach for her, to say something that could hold all the confusion and tenderness that filled the space between us. But I didn't. I just stood there, every muscle tense, afraid of ruining the fragile truth we'd stumbled into. She took the photo back, folding it carefully into her bag. I don't know what to do with this, she said. With any of it. Her voice broke on the last word, and for the first time, I saw her not as someone older or composed, just as someone human, carrying too much history for one heart. When she turned to leave, she paused again at the door, rain whispering against the glass. Without facing me, she said, almost to herself, maybe we were always meant to meet, just not for the reasons we thought. And in that moment, the whole story shifted, not toward love, but toward something deeper, recognition. It was closing time again when she returned. No rain this time, no excuses. Just her, standing in the doorway with that same look that always made the air feel too still. I didn't plan to come, she said softly, but I couldn't sit at home anymore. I didn't say anything, just nodded toward the stool, the same one she always chose. She sat down, clasping her hands in her lap, like she was holding something fragile there. For a while, the only sound was the soft hum of the fluorescent light overhead. I kept wiping down the counter that didn't need wiping. She watched me do it. That quiet, knowing kind of watching she did when words would only get in the way. Finally, she broke the silence. You've been kind to me in ways you shouldn't have to be. I didn't do anything, I said. That's exactly it. She exhaled, eyes flicking toward the floor. You didn't try to fix me. You just stayed. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. I looked up. She wasn't crying, but she was close. And it hit me then, what she'd really been trying to hold together all this time. I don't know what this is, I said quietly, but it feels real. Her gaze lifted, steady but trembling around the edges. It is. She stood up then, slow, uncertain, and crossed the small space between us. I didn't move. Couldn't. She stopped just close enough that I could smell the faintest trace of her perfume again, that mix of citrus and rain that had followed me for weeks. I've spent years making sure no one gets too close, she said. And now I'm standing here wishing I didn't have to keep doing that. Her honesty landed with a kind of gentleness that felt heavier than any confession. I wanted to tell her that I understood, that I'd felt the same pull and the same fear, but the words stayed trapped somewhere between my ribs. Instead, I reached for her hand, slowly, like asking permission. When our fingers touched, she didn't flinch this time. She just let out a shaky breath, her thumb brushing against my palm like she wasn't sure if she was comforting me or herself. We stayed like that. No words, no promises. Just the shared stillness of two people who'd stopped pretending they could go back to how things were. I don't know how this ends, she whispered. Maybe we don't have to know, I said. A small, tired smile touched her lips. She leaned forward, just enough for her forehead to rest against mine. It wasn't romantic, not really. It was more like surrender, to truth, to timing, to everything unspoken between us. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world outside the glass blurred into nothing. No rain, no noise, no rules. Just warmth. When she finally stepped back, she didn't say goodbye. She didn't have to. Because whatever we'd been avoiding had already happened, quietly, inevitably, in that single shared breath where love didn't need to be declared to be real. It's been 6 months since the last time she came to the shop. Her car still drives fine. At least, that's what my sister says whenever her boyfriend mentions it in passing. I just nod, pretending it doesn't mean anything. Pretending I don't still look toward the doorway whenever I hear the bell ring. But I've stopped expecting her. That's the difference. For a while, I thought what happened between us needed some kind of conclusion, a talk, an apology, maybe even a clean break. But time has a strange way of softening things that words never could. Now, when I think about her, it isn't sharp anymore. It's just quiet, warm, in the way memory sometimes is when you stop fighting it. I remember the sound of her laugh, always brief, like she was afraid too much joy might draw attention. I remember how she held her coffee with both hands, as if it gave her permission to stay longer. And I remember that last night, her hand in mine, her forehead against mine, and how nothing about it felt wrong, even though everything about it should have. She once said I made her feel safe. I didn't understand what that meant until after she left. Because safety isn't about fixing someone. It's about being the one place they can stop pretending to be okay. Since then, I've noticed things differently. The pauses in people's voices. The way someone's eyes flick away when they're lying to themselves. The silence that hangs after a truth too heavy to speak. She taught me to listen for that. To see people the way she saw engines. Not by what's broken, but by what still tries to work. Sometimes I wonder if she ever drives past. If she slows down just enough to glance at the window and remember the quiet that lived here for a while. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she's moved on, or healed, or just learned how to want less. But maybe that was the point. Maybe not every connection is meant to be permanent. Some just appear long enough to change your understanding of what love actually feels like when it isn't trying to be perfect. Love, I've learned, isn't always loud or certain. Sometimes it's the space between words, the shared silence, the soft collapse into honesty before the world pulls you apart again. And when I lock up each night, I catch myself doing one small, stupid thing, wiping the same corner of the counter where her hand once rested, like some part of me still believes warmth can linger in wood. If you've ever met someone who changed you without even trying, someone you couldn't keep but also can't forget, then maybe you know what I mean. Because sometimes, the love story doesn't end when they leave. Sometimes, it just keeps echoing quietly in the places they once stood. If this story found something true in you, don't forget to share it. Or tell me what moment stayed with you most.